Association of Secondary School Principals, or NASSP. And before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit about NASSP and some of the events and opportunities that we have coming up. You can see my bio there, but really I just wanted to share the incredible benefits of membership with NASSP. We provide valuable resources, professional development opportunities, and a platform for networking with like-minded professionals. Being part of the NASSP community means amplifying your impact and advocating for positive change in education, and being part of a supportive network that empowers educators to lead with vision and purpose. So I encourage you to elevate your leadership journey and check out some of the resources that we have. You can see that there is a link and also a QR code for you to check out some of our information. And if you have any questions, my contact information is on there as well. And speaking of resources, one of our upcoming events is United, the National Conference on School Leadership, which we will be hosting together with NAESP. And we encourage you all to join us for a transformative experience that brings together visionary educators, thought leaders, and experts in school leadership. We encourage you to join us to immerse yourself in dynamic workshops, gain insights from influential speakers, and network with passionate professionals who share your commitment to shaping the future of education. United is the gateway to cutting-edge strategies, collaborative solutions, and a supportive community that empowers you to lead with impact. So don't miss out on this opportunity to elevate your leadership skills and be part of a movement shaping the next era of education. And so you can see we have our link to our website there on the slide, and we hope to see you all in Nashville this July. And with that, let me introduce you to the moderator of today's panel discussion, Dr. Mo. Dr. Mo is the principal of Mount Eden High School in Hayward, California, as well as a board member and Area B coordinator for the California Association of Directors of Activities. She has a career spanning 24 years in education, where she has been a physical education teacher, basketball coach, director of student activities, counselor, assistant principal, and principal. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Mo. I'll pass things over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome and introduction. I am very happy to be here. Kim, thank you very much for opening this up to me and have this opportunity to be in community with other leaders throughout the country, throughout the nation. This is pretty dope. I might get a little nervous, okay? So bear with me. First off, a little bit about Digital for Good. Digital for Good is a nonprofit that educates students and adults about digital citizenship, safety, wellness, and literacy. Through its programs and events, Digital for Good aims to celebrate youth innovation, empower student changemakers, and promote digital safety. Digital for Good reaches thousands of students. Oh, next slide. Digital for Good reaches thousands of students nationwide, and its impact is amplified even further by its innovative train-the-trainer learning model featured in its educational programs. This model empowers students with the tools and training needed to mentor their peers in the safe, responsible use of digital technology. At the foundation of Digital for Good's work is the idea that students are at the core of the solution to online toxicity. When something happens on social media, students are the first to see it. Then we see it, but they're the first ones. The more we can do as administrators and educators to train, guide, and support our students, the more likely they are to take positive action. And that is what we're here to talk about today, is that positive action. What are administrators in this work doing across our nation, across the country, to really support and figure out how to get ahead of social media on our campuses and finding ways that we can positively use it, and also understand to teach our kids how do we get them to get away from the negative sides of it. So today we have three amazing panelists here that I'll introduce. Our first panelist is a principal from Northgate High School, Ms. Kelly Cooper. Raise your hand, Kelly. There she is. Next, we have, next slide. Next, we have from Sullivan High School, Jason Merkel. Give him a good wave and a smile. And then our last panelist, next slide, please. is Laura Agondo, and she is from New York City Public Schools She's the instructional technology specialist. So thank you guys all for being here. Do we have one more panelist? I'm sorry, next slide. Or is that it? Those are panelists. Okay. So thank our panelists for being here. I know they have great information. I'm gonna have my notepad ready too, even though I'm the moderator, to hopefully get some good pointers and ideas. Just to let you guys know, here in the chat, we've opened up the chat feature to comments and questions from our audience members. We'll be holding a Q&A session after the panel discussion. So if you would like your questions to be featured during this segment, please add 2 pound signs to the beginning of your question. So if you're writing that in the chat, go ahead and give us 2 pound signs with your question. In the interest of time, we might not get to all of your questions today, but we may include them in a future webinar. So let's not wait any longer. Let's get into today's discussion around classroom tech policies that we have. Our first question, and our panelists, I'll let you guys rock and roll and go, maybe Kelly, and then Jason, and then Laura. We'll go through, I'll read the question, popcorn style, in the ways in which we have engaged with this work on our campuses. And let's make sure that we unmute our mics when we start talking. Question 1, what technology policies do you currently have in place at your school? How effective are these policies in ensuring appropriate digital etiquette?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Cooper. So I think my answer to this is kind of 2-pronged. We do have district oversight over our technology. We're a 1-to-1 school with Chromebooks, and we have a really robust filtering system. In fact, right before this webinar, I was just dealing with a situation. I think that because, and I'll get to this, but because we've taken phones out of the classroom, students find creative ways to chat while they're in the classroom. So a lot of times it'll be a shared document, but because of our filtering system through BARC and also our IT department, those threads, if they contain something that is, that has a swear word, that seems to be bullying, that's inappropriate in any way, gets sent straight to me. So it's always a fun day when I get to go right into a classroom and sit behind a student and politely tell him that he cannot name, his documents, booty for everyone, or whatever it might have been. So that has been really effective in at least teaching our students effective use of their classroom technology. This year, we also piloted a school-wide classroom phone policy. So I purchased phone spas, as we call them, for every classroom. And as students walk in, they are to put their phone in the phone spa and they stay there for the rest of the period. It's not we don't take it away for the day. It's just for each particular classroom. And that way teachers have some autonomy if they need the kids to have their phones for what are those called? Like the quizzes, the Kahoots, things like that. But it has been really effective in limiting students in the hallways, limiting them at the same time in the hallways, and then our fight data has really improved as well. We do call it a phone spa instead of a phone jail. It's a very Northgate, it's a very Northgate term. So
awesome, thank you. Jason, you want to chime in?
Yeah, so currently we have a no cell phone policy, as well as Kelly. So same within our classroom. And so I've been our high school principal for about 4 years now. And so whenever I first took over, we had a big problem, obviously, just like everyone else, and phones were running rampant, and students were able just to, access their phones whenever they want, and had a lot of cheating and things like that. So we really looked hard at our policy, and eliminated our phones in my second year as being a principal. And it's been great. We're the same. We're 1-to-1, with our Chromebooks as well, but there's no phones, in the classroom, in the hallways, things like that. If a student wants to go to the bathroom, we tell them that they all have a locker, so we don't have a spa, but we have our lockers, and so they have to keep them in there. sort of locked throughout the school day. The time that they can access their phones is at lunch. So we have a 25-minute lunch, for everyone. So if mom or dad sends a text or something like that, we do allow them to have some of that freedom, to have their phones, during that time. And a lot of times what we have actually found out, it's pretty refreshing, is students really don't access their phones too much during lunch. They are kind of engaged in conversation again. So that's our current policy that we have. It took us a little bit to get to this point. Kim has put up some data on your screen right now on the slide deck right here. And we were actually tracking our cell phone discipline and where we came from in our school community. Again, going back to my first year, it was as being a principal, it was a COVID year. And you can see our data right there with our disciplines. Give you an example of 1 year, my very first year back in 2020. There's 163 days or 165 days in our school year, and we had 53 major cell phone violations. So every third day, myself and our administrative team were dealing with some sort of cell phone issue. And so, that created just a problem for us. So we have tracked our data ever since then, since we've implemented this policy. And currently, as you see in 23 at the start of our school year, we were down significantly in our discipline. So we were very proud of the policy that we enacted, for sure. So
Thank you for that, Jason. Laura, you want to finish this out?
Absolutely. So I don't work at a particular school. I'm actually what's called a central employee. So I can speak about kind of multiple sites. And I can tell you right now here in New York City, we have the added pressure of being the largest school system in the nation, just about 1 million students. So we absolutely need to have these policies. So we have a policy in place that currently mandates that schools teach digital citizenship in order to receive their SIPA and E-rate funding. We also have a bunch of guidelines and policies around social media and internet acceptable use. But I will tell you right now, in my role, and a lot of what I work with schools with is really, it's not so much about the policy, it's about what we do to make it so that we don't have to look up the policy, right? Because the way policies are written is the thing has happened, right? It's gone down, someone's done the thing they're not supposed to do. And you seek the policy to figure out like, what's the next step? What's the protocol? What's the procedure? And we want it so that schools don't have to do that. I mean, yes, it's a necessary evil and saying that it's never going to happen, but we want that to be, isolated incidences rather than the norm. So oftentimes what we're showing folks is that you have to teach responsible usage. Policies are not about responsible usage. Again, it's about saying, this is what happens and this is how you deal with the crisis. It's not, here's actually how you act safely and responsibly. So I take the approach of saying like, yes, we have policy, but really what's going to empower you to make real change in your school and in your classrooms is to teach digital citizenship. Again, it's not going to cure everything, but I like to think of it as that we want to focus on being proactive rather than reactive. Because again, like I said, anytime you get the policy out, the thing has already happened. So you do need both. I don't want to be misinterpreted as like, I don't need policy. We do, but I think it's really important for schools to understand that the policy is to address when things already happen. And we don't want that to be the main focus.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And panelists, you guys did that without me even telling you. There's about 6 to 7 minutes per question. And we got through that one in 6 minutes and 17 seconds. Let's go. For our guests here today, we are going to have our questions at the end, so you can definitely put them in the chat so that you don't forget them. And maybe if it's particular to a particular question, you can put question 1 or Q1 or something so that we know, but go ahead and add those questions in and we'll get to as many as we can after we go through our list of questions. All right, are we ready for question 2? Jason, you're gonna kick us off with this one, okay?
That sounds good.
How do you enforce your technology policy?
Well, so it goes back to kind of buy-in. So whenever we implemented our policy, 3 years ago, at first I polled our teachers, and without the teacher support in the classroom, and we have about little over 60 teachers in our high school that I oversee, and I could not do this without them, obviously. So I had to talk with our teachers and see, if they were going to enforce this. If I kind of put the kind of tighten the reins, I guess, so to speak, on this policy, would they enforce it in their classroom? Because I told them I can support them. So that was my first step, was making sure that I had teacher buy-in, and we did 100%. Our entire staff wanted there to be some sort of technology restriction that we all could hold students accountable for and have the same expectation across the board. So we're not inconsistent with our policies, because being inconsistent creates confusion. And so we did not want our students to be confused with our policy. So first we got the buy-in, and then after we got the buy-in, then we overly communicated. So we actually enacted our policy in the start. So in June, we started to get our policy out to everybody, and then really just communicate it. Let them know what the rules are going to be. They can have their phone on them. We're not going to take it. They would be required to put it in their locker. And then if they didn't, then we would enact our discipline matrix if that came into play. So I believe the front end, the legwork on our front end was our communication piece. And now, yeah, like every school in America, we're going to have a couple little problems here and there, but it is a night and day difference. And I feel that and we always have class meetings to start out our school year, and I go over in depth with the cell phone policy. When we have our back to school parent meetings, I communicate our policy. So so I feel our biggest thing, how do you enforce it? We communicate it. Like we just really talk about it quite a bit, and that's our and we do have complete buy-in. So I'm really really happy with that.
Thank you. Laura, you want to chime in?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we do require for schools to teach digital citizenship as part of the policy. So in order to enforce that piece of it, we actually do have schools filling out an attestation form every single year that certifies that they taught this curriculum to every single student. And we also actually ask schools to indicate what curriculum they used, because there are several out there, and they're all listed. We have a website internally called our info hub, and that's where teachers, staff, principals, anyone within the DOE can actually go in there and access the curriculum, see what the requirements are, kind of read all the policy information, and do that. We also, for when situations arise, we have a whole code of conduct that takes into account the students' ages, what the infraction is, and then we can decide what is applicable. But again, we underscore that, when it comes to enforcing, that always sounds so just police-like, and that's not what we want. And I think that's kind of what Jason was speaking about, like getting that buy-in so that it doesn't feel like it's enforcement, right? It feels like we're in this together, right? And we all see the benefit of doing this, because we're not trying to catch kids doing bad things or we're actually promoting responsible usage. So we always make the policy available, and you can see what all the regulations that come with it are, but we really approach this from a place of kind of knowledge and empowerment rather than like enforcing and making sure that everyone's following the rules, because that is, I guess, antithetical to buy-in, right?
Love that. Thank you. Like the switch on the words, the code switching is pretty dope. Whatever works is whatever works. Kelly, you want to finish us out with this question?
Sure. I agree, and I'll kind of build on what Laura is saying as far as it, not necessarily being an enforcement piece, but it really isn't a relationship piece, because it's occurring in the classrooms. Once the expectation has been established, the teacher then has the relationship with the student. It is also the norm in the class. And so the student that doesn't use the phone spa is then out of the norm, and that becomes a whole conversation. But it happens so infrequently because our teachers really do understand the power of relationships, and the students have noticed the difference that they have felt in the classroom being free of that device. We had some, I think another piece of our policy has been the early adoption. So last year we had some teachers try this as an early adoption because, like Jason mentioned, we need teacher buy-in. And at first they wanted it to be a top-down policy that the administration says you can't have phones, so we're taking them all away at the door. And we weren't going to do that. And so some teachers decided they wanted to try it out in the classroom. We got them some phone spas. And then they saw the difference in the engagement in the students felt the difference, and then they became our canaries for the rest of the school. And so when it came to starting this year, our teachers were already bought in. They said, I want that for my classroom. And that's why I bought everybody a spa, and then here we are. And so now it's a conversation, you know, it's still not a top-down policy. So if I have a teacher or two who has seen some issues in their classroom, that's one of our first questions. Do you have a phone policy? Do you have a phone spa, or do you use your phone spa? And 9 times out of 10, if they're having management issues, they're not using that policy. And so we do have the conversation about it's never too late. There's a great chance to reset right now, and let's see how this works for your students and for you.
So is the phone spa, I'm sorry, I have a question, but I'm the moderator, so I can ask a quick question. Is it one of those little like things that hang on the wall and they can just drop their phone in there, and like each teacher has one of those in the class, or is it like those lock pouches at some concerts?
Oh yeah, the yonder pouch. I'll come back to that one. But our current is either, so the teachers got to shop. I let them choose their little spa, and so it's either the one that looks like a shoe pouch thing, or there were a couple of great little lockers made out of wood that we had fun building up in the office. Some of them chose the lockers where every student has a little spot. But the easiest and the most economical were the pouches. My district, we have 5 high schools in my school district, and they are looking at Yonder for Everybody. That is one of those magnetic pouches that get locked on the way in and unlocked on the way out. And if they decide to adopt that district-wide, then we all are doing it. I mean, so that it's a district policy. So we're looking at it. I've been to a Bruno Mars concert where, you know, he sang a song about taking phones, and it is a different experience. But that would be a full district-wide adoption if we do it.
Nice. Thank you guys so much. What I appreciated hearing is the more relationship-centered in not looking at it as, you know, you can't and you can't, but we want to build the relationship. We want to show you how and when, instead of continuing to tell you when you can't, so that you can, so our teenagers can learn how to make those responsible decisions about the pressure, because we're the same way, right? We leave out of class, as soon as that class leaves, we're like checking it out, because we're all trained in that way. But having the conversations around the relationships and building those relationships, those communities in classroom, are key and huge. Thank you guys. Laura, we're gonna start with you on question 3. Get ready. Oh, hold on, a couple questions there. Just playing. How is your policy conducive to, and I am at work. Sorry guys, if you hear the bell. We'll let that slide for a minute. Okay. How is your policy conducive to an inclusive learning environment? For example, does it allow for accommodations for students who require the use of a device for learning? Is it inclusive of students who don't have access to or familiarity with a particular device or tool? So how are our policies for alternative or unique situations on our campuses?
Absolutely. So again, here in New York, we are 1 million students strong. And what that means is that our policies have to be extremely flexible, because we teach a very diverse population of students. Diverse in a lot of facets, not just racial diversity or ethnic diversity, but also in language spoken, you know, in regards to if a student has a disability or not. So we have to contend with all of that. And as you've probably seen in the news lately, we've received a lot of migrant students, which means we have the added pressure of translation. So we definitely attempt to ensure that all of our policies do meet the needs of all of our students. We have actually a lot of support for the various communities. For example, for students with disabilities, we have a CAT team. CAT stands for the Center for Assistive Technology. So if a student has been identified as needing more, because we are one-to-one, so you know, some students, because of their disability, might require a very particular type of device. I actually had a student, a former student, her name was Maeve, and she used a very, very cool piece of technology because she was born with basically very little fine motor skills. So she was in a wheelchair and she had one good neuron in her arm. And so she operated a special type of iPad using a touch system where she would tap this, the little sensor on her pad, and this one line would appear across her screen, and then once she tapped, it would stop, another line would appear, and that's how she would click things. It was triangulating where on the screen she wanted to manipulate something. Very, very cool, but that couldn't happen without our CAP team, right? We understand that, handing out a Chromebook to everybody, that's great for about 95% of your students. The other 5% are going to need something a little bit more because they're working with different abilities. So like I said, we attempt to, whether it's a disability, whether it's a language issue, or just anything in between, we are working with both our students and their families and the school in particular to provide that support, because it is very important that every student gets this. We don't want to leave anyone out.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I don't know. That was a great and comprehensive answer. I think that being a one-to-one school really kind of takes a lot of that concern off the plate, because the assistive technology that our students might use exists on the Chromebooks that we give them. If they don't, then we get them added. There are we do have to be flexible, as Laura mentioned, and part of that is for medical conditions. My daughter is one, so if you have a type 1 diabetic who needs access to their phone for blood sugar monitoring and things like that, then they get that written into their plan, and they have access to their phone. I saw a question in the chat about smartwatches. That is one way to kind of bridge that gap. Is having a smartwatch. I can get the notification right on my watch that my blood sugar is low, and then I don't have to go and get my phone. I can just receive that and react to it. And so, if a student is really desperate to try to text somebody from their smartwatch, it's obvious. Number one, it's not something that you can hide very well. It's slow, unless they're doing the Dick Tracy and speaking into their watch. And and it can be disruptive, and so it's easy to I don't want to say monitor it, but it's easy to discourage it just by it being a big disruption to the class in general. So yeah, that's the answer to my question.
Thanks, Kelly. Jason, you want to finish us out?
Yeah, and so we're just the same, like Kelly and Laura both talked about. We do make for accommodations to provide, and so just a couple of examples that we have is for like a heart monitor, certain things like that. If a student does have a medical issue, we will absolutely make any sort of accommodations like that. But then, as far as like an inclusive learning environment, so one thing we have allowed too is like our band. Our band uses a technology software when they're out on the field and working on their marching. We have a very successful band, and so they actually have to check the I can't remember the name of it quite a bit, but their coordinates of where their feet are at and things like that. Well, they can't do that with a Chromebook in their hand. So we have technology. We have an app that will check their coordinates, and kind of it's almost like a little GPS where they monitor their movements and rhythms. And so they have to have their phones for that. So we do allow for those students during band and when they practice during our school day to have those in their pocket, and our band director's great about it, making sure that they put those back up at the end of the day. So when it comes to things like that, if we're using it for an instructional purpose, we'll make those accommodations as well.
Thank you so much for that, especially like with the state standardized testing and all of those accommodations and where they get them. Like it's truly important for kids to be able to know how to access them on their one-to-one device and not just solely relying on their phones for those things. And Kelly, thank you for checking out that smartwatch comment in the chat. Thank you guys again for all of that. I think that it expands so far beyond just cell phones with the access to technology and how it used to be you could use it, but now we are all using it, and it's everywhere. And so it's beyond the cell phone. So I definitely appreciate you guys really talking beyond just that cell phone usage. Next question. I like this, and I want to add in a little bit to this because we talked a lot about like medical concerns and assistive technology to support their learning. One situation that we aren't really addressing is safety concerns and concerns. Sorry, hope they're not late to class. Safety concerns and parents wanting their kids to have their phones on their person in the event of emergencies and things like that, with the school shootings, the safety concerns around campuses. I'm quite sure that there's been ways that we've had to update these policies as we've gone on. And so that's our next question for the group is how are you planning to update your policies for the upcoming school year? Or, when you see there's a need, like what is that process that you go through for updating those policies? I think we are at Kelly. We're back to Kelly to start off.
All right. Well, aside from the potential addition of the Yonder bags, we'll see how that goes. I think the front loading of communication will be my biggest update. Providing parents with the philosophy and the why. I really haven't received pushback from either parents or students. This policy, we put into place right before school started, and it has just generally been, this is what we do. And we really haven't received a lot of pushback. Like I mentioned, the times where we do receive, or I should say, when I receive students who need to have a conversation, it's usually when I have a substitute teacher in the space and we haven't communicated well enough with our subs. And that's an update I'm making next year too, a welcome letter for our substitutes, making sure that they understand what our expectations and policies are so that right when they get in the classroom, they're on board. And then just front loading with the why. I think that's always important in any kind of shift and change. And I love to do that with some testimonials, some information from our students and some voice from our teachers as well, explaining how that has changed their experience so that immediately when we receive our new 9th graders next year, they can get on board and understand why we're doing it, that it's not just a mean Principal Cooper decision. And so that's the biggest change I'm planning to make is how I'm going to communicate about it.
They don't call you mean Cooper. They better not.
No.
All right, Jason, you want to keep us going with this one?
Yeah, and Dr. Mo, you brought up a good point. Whenever we went to our policy 3 years ago, again, we had great buy-in from our school and from our community, and ultimately the kids. And so, but you did bring up a good point because I did have some parents, ask me, well, we want to be in contact with our students. What if something happens in the school building and we can't communicate, or how are we going to communicate with our students during the day? And the one thing that I did have to kind of bring up is obviously a little bit of separation is a good thing, and allowing these high school students to grow up. But it's just we again have Chromebooks and you can email. You can email. Your son or daughter, and so that was reassuring for parents to hear that, and they didn't think about that. They think their only form of communication is texting. So that's been a good a good thing kind of for that, I feel. But I don't know if we're going to change a whole lot. We do have an AirPod policy in. We don't allow for anything wireless, so we do allow for wired in headbuds or earbuds, sorry, into the Chromebook where they can listen to music. So if it's that time, we're on a block schedule, so we have 90-minute classes. So if there's that downtime of 20 minutes where you're working quietly or whatever, they can plug in, and that way the teacher can see, okay, who's maybe plugged in, and it's not something that's covering up their that they can cover up with their hair or whatever the case may be. Because I also found myself as a principal trying to greet students in the morning. I stand at the doorway and welcome our kids. And if they have an AirPod in, half the time they won't even look at you, so there goes that communication piece. So we have done away with AirPods. And again, we really don't have a problem because like I mentioned earlier, and Kelly did as well, is the communication piece. Like we have just communicated, overly communicated, just let them know our expectations. And again, it's not a top-down thing. This is kind of our building thing. So I think that's that's just, again, kind of what we've done. So we just want to be consistent. I think so when we're updating our policy, I do like Kelly's idea about the subs. I wrote that down in my notes just because I don't do a good job probably of communicating with our subs. And when we do have a few little minor issues, it is during that time. So, you know, as far as us, we're in year 3 of our implementation, and it is going very well. And so now, like Kelly said too, with her school, it's just who we are. It's what we do. And, you know, so it's just, we're trying to, you know, rebuild that school community, you know, after a pandemic is what we're trying to just get at.
Thank you. Laura, you want to finish us up with this question?
Sure, sure. So in terms of policies that we're looking to update, again, I speak from a central standpoint. So I think like when I hear Jason and Kelly talk, like those are very school-based decisions, and we absolutely empower all of our schools here to do what makes sense, right? Like what happens at the elementary level is very different than what happens at the high school, and we want our principals to make developmentally appropriate decisions. But in thinking about policies that we're updating, the big one that we're dealing with on our end is updating our policy, and really this isn't so much updating, it's actually creating AI policy. This is something that I think probably a lot of school districts are doing. Again, maybe not at the, you know, the school level, but at the district level, you're having to figure out like, how are we contending with AI usage, right? There's been a lot of talk about plagiarism, but I always tell folks, like, you're scratching the surface if you think that that is like the biggest issue with AI. It means you don't understand this technology well enough to know, because I'm actually not super concerned with students plagiarizing. I mean, the internet has existed since '94, and I'm pretty sure students were using it. I know I had students, even when I was at the elementary level, using Wikipedia and passing off passages as their own. So we're looking into making sure that our new AI policy, which is currently in development, should be ready by June and ready for full, you know, enforcement, to use that word, in September. We're also updating some of our social media guidelines and policies around that, because that landscape is constantly changing, and the ways in which, you know, students are using it. So those are two things kind of like at that central level that we're looking at to help schools, because it's tricky to navigate, and to know what to say and how to deal with all these new technologies that are coming our way.
Thank you.
Dr.
Laura,
Mo, can I jump back in real quick? I know there was a question about from Barbara there about, do we allow large headphones as well as small wired earbuds? And we do not. So we don't allow the big where they cover you know, the ear. It's just the wired in earbuds. And so, and we also have those available in our office as well. So we don't want you know, students, if they forget and maybe they need them, maybe there's some sort of anxiety or something that they have, we want to make sure that we are stocked and kind of ready for that as well. So, but we don't allow the large earbuds. So sorry, thanks for letting me jump back in.
No problem. I was going to ask that. But Laura, I might need a copy of that AI policy you guys are putting together, though, because that's been the big thing around here is, what do we do? And some of our teachers, you know, have some great ideas, but I know policy is where we're headed. And so sharing is caring, just in case.
We will absolutely share it out. I can also say, I mean, we're drawing on some other school districts too. You know, here in New York City, it's great, but you know, I keep stressing we're a very large school system, so we don't actually move as fast. There's a lot of other school systems because they're a lot smaller, and they don't have to run things by 27 different lawyers and layers of approval. They get things put out faster. So we've actually been looking at some of our other colleagues just up and down the East Coast, and seeing some of their policies. I know some school districts out in Maryland have been really kind to us and sharing some stuff that they're doing. And so, yeah, sharing is definitely caring. Reach out to other school districts, because I think there's some really great things that people are conceptualizing and trying to capture and put down on paper to help everyone out in this area.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do want to say, I love your question, Tobias. I want to keep that today. I want to acknowledge that I see it in here, and I know we probably all have a few things to say about that. So hold on to that. We didn't forget about you. Panelists, thank you for that one. We're going to go to our next question. I think we have we have this question and one more question after that, and then we'll be open for some Q&A. Our next question, and Jason, you're gonna lead us off with this one. What advice would you give to a new administrator on choosing and enforcing an effective technology policy?
Yeah, so for us, this is exactly what we did, and I would recommend it wholeheartedly. Number one, get buy-in from your staff. Make sure that they will enforce it, because again, without them, it's like I tell our staff, I will support you whatever, and I'm not going to micromanage you either. But I do need us to be consistent, because consistency eliminates confusion. So as long as we're consistent, our kids understand the policy. So the number one thing for me was to get buy-in. Then after that is the communication. So, we've got a radio station in our town. We've got newspapers, things like that, newsletters. We were pumping this information out 2 months ahead before school even began. So we were getting everything out into our community, into the students' hands. I mean, I would go out in the community and be at Walmart or whatever, and people would, come up and ask me about it. And, I just feel like we over communicated. And I know there's some districts around our area where we're kind of right outside of St. Louis, and so they've reached out about it. And that's the two things that we have done. Number one, get buy-in, and number two, communicate. Just top, and again, it's not, I like what Kelly said earlier about don't have it as a top-down approach. It's not my policy, it's our policy on how we're going to operate on a day-to-day in our school community. So that's my two things for sure.
Thanks, Jason. Laura, you want to chime in?
Absolutely. So in terms of advice for our administrators, again, policy to me is like, it's there for you. You want to read through. I feel like especially here in the DOE, our policy is always so just filled with a bunch of like legal jargon and gobbledygook. To me, I find it to be super inaccessible. It's typically some large PDF file, and it's a lot to go through. So in terms of just practical advice, it's very much what we've all been saying. It's about building those relationships. It's also about taking a more proactive approach. I always tell folks, like, if you're digging out the policy, the thing has happened. We want to get to that place where the thing isn't happening so much. So if you teach that responsible usage, if you value that work that you're doing, if you combine digital citizenship with, some sort of social emotional learning, component, you're going to be fine. So, don't like, sometimes we stress ourselves out. We look at these policies. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. Take a breath. Practical terms, we just need to teach our kids to be safe. And if we make this a community effort, it's actually not so bad. You don't have to do so much enforcing, so to speak.
Thank you. Kelly.
Yeah, I would echo my colleagues here. I think that they've both kind of hit it on the head. But what I would say too is not only the calls, what am I going to say? Some of my teachers, like I mentioned, wanted it to be top down. They wanted it to be, from admin, so that they can lean on that a bit more, maybe because they're not comfortable with confrontation, or maybe they just didn't feel like they would be supported. So part of that communication piece was sharing with teachers the what ifs. Yeah, I will absolutely support this policy in your classroom, and here's what's going to happen if a student declines, or if you have some issues. And so, like Jason was mentioning, the discipline matrix, we make sure that we're clear both to the parents and the students, and then also to our teachers about the what ifs, so that they know that we're going to follow through on if and when they do have an issue, and then they'll feel a little bit more supported having that policy in their own classroom. So that's what I would add to that. And then I always loved, when I was first starting as an administrator, I'm sure I heard it at CATA, or one of the great workshops I've been to, but I always loved the phrase, you are what you allow. And some of this policy is born from cyberbullying or social media interactions. And so part of what I make sure that we as an administrative team do is we do react when something comes up, and we do make sure that our students understand that we won't allow it, right? And so I think that when I came on board, a lot of things had not been reacted to. And that was the voice I heard from the students, was they felt like things would go by without any kind of notice from administration or without any kind of reaction. And so therefore it got worse. And so we have an anonymous reporting system, and we really do get right on top of these issues as they come up. So our students understand that if you do this, you know, you're going to end up in somebody's office.
And we accept responsibility now.
Nice, thank you. Can we make sure we're all muted? Make sure we're all at work, trying to multitask. Thank you for that. You talked about a discipline matrix. Kelly, I would love to see a copy of that as well, because I love the connection to the what ifs. Probably a selfish plug right there, but it's okay. This is a safe space for selfish plugs. Thank you guys for that. All right, we're gonna not get to our last question for our panel. I want to definitely open it up to the floor. I'm looking at time, want to make sure that we have enough time to actually hear from our guests and kind of hear what are some of the questions and things that we may have about what we heard today, and what we're thinking, and any questions about new things to do. For new administrators, I think one thing that I would say is come in and look at what's happening right now. What is the policy that's currently in place? And as you work through a year of being there, then maybe you can begin to kind of bring things in that works for your leadership style and to get that buy-in. But start off with what they have, if they have something. I think will be the easiest for our new administrators who are trying to figure their whole life out, and a whole school's life out at the same time. Panelists, thank you guys for your input, the work that you're doing, and just how graceful you guys are with really trying to work with our teachers and our students and our staff and our communities on making sure that we have digitally safe communities. So thank you. I do want to open it up now for some questions. I want to start with Mr. Tobias's question. I want to make sure that we hit that. And the question was about staff. Is there a policy for educators in your building around cell phone usage? Anybody want to chime in? And this doesn't have to be all three. If one of you guys have, something phenomenal that you're doing, that's great. If you don't really have anything, you don't have to say anything, but definitely want to hear from some folks.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one real quick. Just so as far as us, that is good. That's something we found out halfway through initiating our policy, about 6 months into it. We did, as a faculty, getting buy-in from our staff. It was about November, December, and a few kids would be like, well, I don't understand why we're getting in trouble or have this policy when teachers are on their phone in class and they're supposed to be teaching and things like that. And so, I didn't even take that into consideration. I'm under the impression we're professionals and going on. So we talking to our faculty, I use their discretion as well, because I go back to the micromanage piece. Like, we do have a couple apps and systems where if we need to quickly communicate with our staff, they have full autonomy to get to their phone and check it if it's a situation within school. Now, if you're doing anything personal, obviously you need to wait until your free hour or prep hour, but we do have that consistency now amongst our staff, and it has made for less ripples. So there is that expectation that in the classroom to just stay off your cell phone.
Thank you, Jason. Any other, even from some of our guests here, anybody else have a policy or something for educators? All right, sounds good.
I'll just chime in and say that while it's not a written policy, because that would happen at the HR level, it is a conversation and an expectation that our teachers would not be on their phones in front of students. We do use a messaging system in an emergency where if our power goes out, for example, we're an indoor school and our PA system doesn't work in that event, I have to use my cell phone to text message the whole staff, and I have a quick way to do it with Parent Square. But that's one example of why teachers might keep their phones nearby. And so we don't put a policy in place for those kind of reasons, but the expectation is they wouldn't be on the phone in front of students. And if they are, then it's a conversation with me.
If I could chime in, because I heard this question and I thought instantly about something that has come up more recently for us, because we don't dictate what teachers do. Again, that's between you and your administrator. You shouldn't be on your phone if the expectation is that you're teaching. But what we're actually finding is that teachers and staff, really just in general, are getting in trouble for the things they do on their phones outside of the school hours. Hence why we're actually in the process right now of putting out guidance around social media. We already have guidance for staff, but in these times where it's politically a little rocky to be really PG about it, things are happening. Our teachers are getting in trouble. They have posted, feelings about the war in Gaza. They have posted feelings about things like DEI. And, they're getting themselves in trouble, because they're sharing personal views, yet on a very public account. And it's having some blowback. So, I want to call that out because, we can certainly talk about dictating what teachers do, but I think on a deeper level, this is the gray area, right? Like a teacher who posts something on Facebook or posts something on Instagram that, they were off the clock, but yet families saw it, right? Or an administrator saw it, and it becomes a problem. So I think that to me is where I'm concerned, and it's something we ought to address.
Thank you. Thank you. Other things that we have in here, parent education is a necessity as well. Looks like, we have parent coordinator. I know we have family engagement specialist, and the amazing autistic Kim Carr. Of course, she thought of that. And there's digital conversations for parents as well, to continue to get them on board with what's needed in the classrooms. Another question we have, are there any policies with reference to the smartphones with the device spot? I think this goes back to Kelly. Like, what is the policy that they, you have your spot, your phone goes in your spot? Does each teacher create their own type of policy? I think that's what you were asking, Kim. If not, you can definitely chime in. But like, what is that policy for that spot? And do you have one for smartwatches? Looks like that's what it is. Is that what you're asking, Kim?
The question that someone had before was more, Kelly, with your device spa, then what's your policy if they have a smartwatch?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into a position where we've had to worry about the watches. I kind of talked about it a little earlier about their conspicuousness in terms of being able to do anything functionally on your watch. They might receive notifications, but we really haven't had much of an issue with the watches yet. So it's not in our policy. It's not, and the question about teachers, the teachers are coming up with their own rules and expectations around their phone spa, whether they do it right at the beginning. Some of my teachers take roll using the phone spa, and that's how they figure it out, because everybody's assigned a number and they say, okay, number 3 is gone, Kelly's absent, and call out Kelly's name. Are you here? Some of them do it, use the phone spa only during test days. And so they just find out what works for their classroom. And then as we really work it into conversation in our evaluations quite a bit, so that we can understand what challenges a teacher might be seeing in the classroom, and then be able to suggest, okay, we'll talk about your device policy and how's that working and how can we improve it. And that's what we look for in our observations too, is, are the students engaged? Are they on task? And if not, what could help that situation?
Yeah, thank you. I know I have it's not a problem, but not everybody wants to enforce a cell phone policy. And so the conversations that I start to have with our kids is, well, you're in high school now. You have to know the differences, right? You can go to mom and get this, but you're not going to get it from dad, or vice versa. So you have to start understanding, like, okay, when I go to first period, I know Dr. Walton has a phone policy. Let me put my phone in my backpack, put it away, whatever. But I know when I go to Mr. Merkel's class, well, he lets us use our phones because we are listening to music while we're doing our do now. But for students, like, there's a time and a place. And those tend to be the conversations that I have. And I think that supports them also with understanding, we can't, in life, we're not going to just take our phone away from us when we have to do, but we know that when we're in meetings, when we're in front of our class, when we're taking care of business, that the phone is not the priority. And so how do we teach our kids for that temptation to keep it where it needs, off and away, while they're working, while they're in school, because not all of our teachers want to enforce that policy. And so it's really kind of having the conversations with them as well. Okay, well, if you don't want to enforce the policy, what are you doing, and how can we support you with what you're doing? Because there are some teachers that do some amazing work with cell phones in the class, and that is a learning tool. So thank you guys for just for the information. Ms. Barbara, yes, Kelly.
Yeah, I was going to address Barbara's question just because I experienced that this year. Actually, I had a newer teacher try to only implement a phone expectation with her freshmen, and then did not for the seniors. And what I noticed, number one, that was her biggest challenge was that class in terms of just general disrespect and engagement and attention. And then we finally convinced her to enforce the policy also with her seniors, as every other teacher had already done it. And then there was a big change. So the freedom, unfortunately, allowed to that particular group was taken advantage of, and they couldn't help themselves. They just had to be on their phone, really watching like TikToks and sports videos and all the things.
Thank you so much for that. And I don't know if you're paying attention in the chat, but Laura has been dropping dimes. If you're not a basketball person, that means giving us some good. I've downloaded almost everything she's put in that chat, policies, different policies and things that New York City Public Schools have. So please, if you haven't had a chance yet, look in that chat and pick up some of those dimes that Laura's given us. I was a basketball player, if you can't tell. To help us with these policies. Thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your answers. Thank you for coming in. We are 2 minutes away from our hour being done, and I can't believe it, but I'm happy that I made it through and my hands aren't as sweaty, and you guys are a great crowd. So maybe Kim will ask me to do this again because I got us through in an hour or so. But thank you guys so much for attending today. We do have a thank you gift for everyone attending, because that's what Kim does, because she's dope like that. We are offering free copies of Digital for Good's Sextortion Defense Resource. Let me say that again. Free copies of the Digital for Good's Sextortion Defense Resource. Is there going to be a conversation on this? Because I think this might need to be the next one. What are we doing for tracking? You can download this resource for free using the link on this slide. You can also get your entire campus educated on the dangers of sextortion by booking a presentation with Digital for Good. We'll provide you firsthand with the tools you need to help prevent your students from becoming victims. Both links should be posted in the chat right now, or we'll be getting there soon. Lastly, I encourage everyone to sign up for our next Admin Tech Talk on May 7th, which will feature brand new topics for discussion. You can also scan the QR code on your screen to get updates on even more great events and free resources from Digital for Good. To our speakers, Jason, Laura, Kelly, thank you guys for joining in with us today and for all of your insight. And thank you to our audience members for tuning in. And we hope to see you guys all again on May 7th. And I want to give a great thanks to Jordana and to Kim for putting this together for us to be in community with one another. So see you on May 7th. If you are a CATA person, hope maybe I'll see you at CATA for those that are in California or close. And I'm going to pass it back over to Jordana and Kim for some final words. Thank you.
And all the gems that Laura was dropping, I'll make sure that's in the follow-up email, you guys, so you guys have all that information. So thank you, Laura, for using your million resources at City Public Schools.
You know, we always have a ton of resources. Again, the policy's there. I don't know how much people read it, but it's there.
And implementing it, but yes. And then please, you guys reach out to us. We are called ICANHELP for a reason. if there is a topic you want to have, I'd ask Dr. Mo to actually be on the panel. And she goes, Kim, can I honestly just be the moderator because I need to know about policy like myself. So I think that's kind of the cool thing too, is telling me what you guys want to learn. And then that's kind of how Dr. Mo got to be the moderator, because I was like, well, what do you want to learn about? So then she said, I want to learn about policy. So that is kind of the fun thing that I just need your guys' help, is you guys have needs, and let's make sure we help that kind of generate that, and then we'll get the right team, just like we did today. Can we please in the chat how amazing our moderator or our panelists were, how amazing they were. Thank you guys so much. You guys, I knew you guys would bring it and give great advice. And then Dr. Mo, always bringing your fun energy and good vibes. So thank you for everybody there. And then Jordana, anything from you?
No, I'm all set. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yep. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah.